This is the explainer. Today, we're figuring out what Microsoft Copilot actually is, what went wrong, and what's coming next as OpenAI prepares to disrupt the very foundation of how we interact with technology. We're looking at a battle that'll define the next decade of personal computing. On one side, we've got the largest software bet in corporate history, and on the other, a completely secret hardware device designed by the literal creator of the iPhone. This isn't just about generative text anymore, folks. It's a war for the interface. It's the story of a company that made the biggest AI bet in history and is now in an absolute race against time to make that bet pay off. Okay, to really understand the scale of this war, you first have to understand the sheer financial gravity of Microsoft's strategy. $37.5 billion. And no, that's not Microsoft's annual budget. That's the amount of money they dropped on AI infrastructure in a single quarter for fiscal year 26 Q2. They're out there physically rewiring data centers across the globe, buying up specialized silicon and pouring just billions into their partnership with OpenAI to make Copilot the default AI layer for the business world. The vision set by CEO Satya Nadella was massive, literally describing it as the biggest opportunity since the internet itself.
Okay, let's dive into this, because here is where that grand vision hits a seriously harsh reality. 3.3%. Think about this. Microsoft has a staggering 450 million Microsoft 365 commercial subscribers, right? These are people practically living in Word, Excel, Outlook, and Teams every single day. Copilot is baked right into Windows. It sits right there in the taskbar. Yet after 2 years on the market, only 3.3% of those potential customers are actually paying for it. That's roughly 15 to 20 million paid seats out of 450 million. The problem isn't awareness. The real issue is that when people actually try the tool, an alarming number of them just stop using it. And honestly, nothing captures why users are bailing quite like this exact sentence. Copilot is for entertainment purposes only. Yeah. In April 2026, this sentence, which was found buried deep in Microsoft's own terms of service for a tool they charged $30 a month for, went completely viral. Just think about that for a second. The very tool that Satya Nadella explicitly marketed as an indispensable coworker carried the exact same legal disclaimer a psychic uses to avoid getting sued. It completely shattered the foundation of trust that enterprise customers actually need to do meaningful work.
When this internal dossier leaked, the internet immediately exploded. I mean, the mockery was swift and it was brutal. Microsoft had to scramble, putting out statements trying to explain that, oh, this was merely legacy language left over from Copilot's early experimental days as a Bing chatbot. But, the damage to their credibility was already done. Microsoft built an AI platform intended to make workers more productive, and then buried a disclaimer basically suggesting you absolutely should not trust it for important decisions. This single legal sentence crystallized a massive perception problem. And the fallout wasn't just reputational, it was highly measurable. Between July and September 2025, Copilot's accuracy net promoter score plummeted from a slightly concerning -3.5 to an absolutely disastrous -24.1. Now, a negative NPS means that far more people are actively warning their colleagues away from the product than actually recommending it. And when surveyed, 44.2% of the users who quit using Copilot entirely cited a direct distrust of its outputs, specifically those sneaky hidden hallucinations, as their primary reason for abandoning the whole thing. This is where it gets highly competitive. The data here reveals a pretty devastating truth about user preference. When enterprise workers are given a completely free choice between Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and Google's Gemini, get this, only 8% of workers actually pick Copilot. Even though Copilot uses the exact same underlying AI models as ChatGPT, the clunky user experience and that huge trust deficit are causing employees to seek out external competing tools just to get their jobs done. A big part of that poor user experience is driven by deep, overwhelming confusion. I mean, Microsoft has created 80 different products and features, all carrying the Copilot brand name. There's Microsoft Copilot, Copilot for Microsoft 365, GitHub Copilot, Copilot Studio, Copilot for Sales, Copilot Cowork. The list just goes on. This massive brand fragmentation means enterprise customers literally do not know what they're paying for, which version they actually need, or if they already have access to it. It's a total crisis of product clarity. Now, what's really interesting about this is that there's one massive, undeniable exception to Microsoft's struggles, and it all comes down to this concept, the instant feedback loop. See, when you ask Copilot to draft a client email in Outlook, it might invent facts or wrong figures that sound incredibly fluent, and you won't catch it unless you already know the answer. That breeds a lot of distrust. But when a developer asks an AI to write a function, they just run the code. It either works immediately or it throws an error.
There's zero ambiguity, and any hallucination is instantly caught and fixed. Because of that instant feedback loop, GitHub Copilot is a runaway success. It currently boasts 4.7 million paid subscribers, seeing a 75% year-over-year growth. Its annual recurring revenue actually topped $3 billion at the end of 2025, and it's deployed in roughly 90% of Fortune 100 companies. It proves unequivocally that when the AI's utility is visible, immediate, and easily verified, enterprise users will gladly open their wallets for it.
So the crucial point is this. While Microsoft is battling software fragmentation, OpenAI is looking at a much deeper, more structural vulnerability. Right now, ChatGPT has an insane 800 million monthly active users. But to reach those users, OpenAI relies entirely on platforms controlled by Apple and Google. At any given moment, Apple's Siri 2.0 or Google's Gemini could just deprioritize the ChatGPT app or remove it from prominent placement entirely. For OpenAI, relying on someone else's hardware is an absolute existential risk. Right now, they're really just tenants in Apple's building.
Well, OpenAI decided they aren't going to be tenants anymore. In May 2025, they quietly executed the largest acquisition in their company's history, larger than any AI model purchase or research lab. They dropped $6.4 billion to acquire a hardware startup most people had never even heard of called IO Products. Now, why on earth spend over $6 billion on a small hardware firm? Because IO Products was founded by Jony Ive. Yeah, for 27 years, Jony Ive was the chief design officer at Apple. He's the guy who designed the iMac that saved Apple in 1998, the original iPod, the MacBook Air, the Apple Watch, and most importantly, the iPhone in 2007. When Sam Altman saw Ive's prototypes for a new AI hardware device, he reportedly called them the most remarkable things he'd ever seen in his life. The very man who built the iPhone is now leading a team of 55 in-house engineers to build the device OpenAI hopes will replace it. And this brilliantly illustrates how OpenAI is taking drastic steps to avoid the spectacular failures of the past. Look, 2 years ago, the Humane AI pin raised $230 million, launched at $6.99, and completely failed. Why? Cloud latency. Every single voice request had to travel to a cloud server, get processed, and come all the way back. A round trip that took several seconds and just completely ruined the experience. OpenAI's flagship device, codenamed SweetPea, directly solves this. It runs locally on a 2-nanometer Samsung Exynos chip. By processing AI on the device itself, OpenAI totally eliminates the cloud latency that permanently bricked the Humane pin. The other critical failure of past devices like the Humane pin or the Rabbit R1 was that they just couldn't answer one super simple question. Why not just use my phone? The smartphone already does everything those devices tried to do, only better. OpenAI realized this and is intensely studying the one company that actually succeeded in AI wearables, Meta. Meta's Ray-Ban smart glasses captured 75 to 80% of the AI wearables market because they were simple, familiar, audio first, and didn't try to replicate a smartphone screen. OpenAI is basically taking that exact playbook. The leaked hardware specs confirm this ambient approach. SweetPea is a behind-the-ear audio wearable with an egg-shaped metal body, acting as a constant AI companion. A second device, Gumdrop, is a screenless pocket device equipped with cameras for environmental awareness. And OpenAI isn't just testing the waters here, guys. They've contracted Foxconn with a target of 40 to 50 million units in year one. To put that massive scale in perspective, that's literally more iPhones than Apple sold in its first 3 years combined. We're expecting the first major reveal in September 2026. Let's move on and see how this builds into Microsoft's frantic counterattack. While OpenAI pivots hard to hardware, Microsoft is desperately trying to fix its software. They've just announced a massive pivot, launching a unified Copilot super app in late summer 2026. Led by Jacob Andreu, this app is going to unify GitHub Copilot, Copilot Chat, and a brand new tool called Copilot Cowork into one single interface. Instead of just generating text, Cowork acts as an agent, planning and executing multi-step tasks in the background autonomously while you just monitor its checkpoints. They are absolutely racing to fix the fragmentation. So what we're looking at here is a fundamental collision course that will define computing for the next 5 years. Microsoft is investing an eye-watering $146 billion in AI infrastructure in 2026 alone, absolutely determined to dominate the software layer through their unified super app. Meanwhile, OpenAI, flush with its $6.4 billion acquisition, is trying to physically bypass Microsoft and Apple entirely by capturing the hardware interface right at the user's ear. The company that wins the ear wins the AI interface for daily life. Here's the honest question to sit with before September. What would you actually use an always-on AI audio device for? What tasks do you do on your phone today that you'd rather do through a voice conversation? That list, your personal list, is the real test of whether OpenAI's device has a market. If you can name 3 things easily, it probably does. If you can't name one, well, that's the challenge OpenAI has to solve. I'm your host. This is The Explainer, the most important tools shaping the world in plain English every week. Subscribe and drop in the comments. Would you buy an OpenAI device, or is your phone good enough? See you in the next one.